Good afternoon. This is Juan Cotto touching bases with you in a parking lot in Tacoma. Pull up the side of the road to, I feel a little bit like Mick Hoffman traveling across the state of Washington and getting an opportunity to see different places. I've been running up and down the road to Olympia, heading down there tonight to testify on a bill. And I figured I'd pull off on the side of the road and I would do Rainier Avenue Radio's WIAA Primetime with Mick Hoffman, who's the executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. Mick, I now know what it's like to be you. Start traveling around the state and have to pull over for this stuff.
Technology is pretty awesome, isn't it? We can find a way to get anything done.
It really is, and crystal's clear. You look great on the screen there. Who would have known? Mick, we just got done with a couple of big weekends in Washington Interscholastic Activities work. Why don't you give us just an update on how the tournaments went? We had wrestling, we had basketball down in Tacoma. Tell us how all those went.
Yeah, our winter events, just like our fall events, have gone extremely well. We had some great basketball games in all three areas. Our state final attendance was up a little bit this year. Our opening round was down actually a little bit, but overall perspective, last year was our highest attendance in 10 years for the entire year. And we're on track with that again this year. So people are appreciating what's going on, but yeah, stick basketball went exceedingly well. Wrestling expanding to that third day, 32 person brackets, was also a huge success. Justin and Tim Graham and the rest of those managers, they did amazing work putting together, potentially the biggest wrestling event in the country. A lot of people don't understand how lucky we are in Washington to have the people we do that do that work. So, we had gymnastics, swimming. I mean, we had so much going on, cheer. We've had some really, really great events. Bowling is getting so popular. We got to add another division, it looks like, and maybe extend even more of more days and more locations. So that's a good problem to have when we got so many kids doing so well that they get to compete at that level.
Tell us the relationship, and tell us about the relationship with the venerable old Tacoma Dome. And I saw an article recently, someone posted some pictures when it was going up, and the famous wood roof facility, I believe coming up on its 40th anniversary, and if it's not, then I know it's got to be closer. We've gone beyond it. And I know that certainly with the way these sports have worked, Tacoma has become a very prime location for the WIAA. I know we've had to move football out of there, but for the other events, it seems to work, and it seems to be a very special destination.
Yeah, it's iconic. I mean, there's just the dome itself from the outside, you see the design of it with the flagpole on the top, the neon on the inside, the pictures, people see that, they know where they're at. The relationship with Travel Tacoma and the Tacoma Dome has really improved in the last 3 years, and we're really appreciative of that. We went to a bid process. So when you talk about the kind of the underbelly of the work, went to a bid process, and we met with them prior to, and we asked them, what would help them be able to give a more competitive bid, because we were getting costed out essentially. I mean, last year, I think I've shared with you that even with we were $50,000 deficit in our 3A, 4A basketball tournament last year. not a sustainable model. And we don't want to move out of Tacoma. We don't want to move out of the Tacoma Dome. So what they told us is that if we went to a longer contract, that they would give them more flexibility to help us out. It also, so for us, what we said is, well, we would need some guarantees on pricing. We don't want to commit to 4 years to a blank check. And so, we had some honest conversations. They helped us understand their needs. We explained ours. And I'll tell you, we're just getting the numbers back this year, but it looks very, very positive. The other piece is the city of Tacoma has paid off the mortgage on that place, right? And so they've paid off that loan. And so they're no longer having to make the monthly payment on that. So now it's on maintaining that structure, 40 years old, right? It's got a little wear and tear. They, to their credit, they bought a couple new scoreboards this year that we used in addition to ours. We still need a little bit of work with that. They're going to enhance one of the floors for us, replace that, some baskets, the things that a lot of people just take for granted that are $100,000 here, $150,000 there. They're stepping forward. They cap prices on the security and some of those other things that they're able to make up. And so that's why people pay to park and pay for concessions. And for us, it's starting to turn into one of those true partnerships. Travel Tacoma is helping supplement some of those costs through tourism. A lot of people probably don't realize this about the WIAA. I saw it in the Yakima Herald when I was over there on my trip across the state for the 3 different venues. But they listed right in the newspaper that the basketball tournament there will bring in $7 million of tourism over the weekend. Think about that. For state cheer, we brought in over $750,000 just in a little town of Battleground because they opened up their high school to us and we're willing to rent it out at a fair price. So, what we bring to communities is more than just games and, kids having a good time. It's the parents and the people, they love them, renting rooms and buying gas and meals and those kinds of things. It's a real economic engine. And Tacoma has really stepped up, and we really appreciate what they've done. If you heard my comments 3-4 years ago, it was a frustration, and now it's true gratitude that we're able to meet in the middle and understand. So
the uniqueness of having both the boys and girls basketball tournaments simultaneously in one arena also, Mick. I remember a couple of years ago, and I can't remember exactly when that was, and maybe it's been a while, when they moved the basketball tournament to Seattle, and I believe the girls tournament was over at the Seattle Center. The boys tournament was at Alaska Air Arena, and people trying to get back and forth and not having a venue where you can see both games, and we felt kind of spoiled with the Tacoma Dome, and it's nice to have that. It's so unique to our state basketball tournament.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And not only boys and girls in the same venue, but 2 classifications. And so you have a full day, 8 games a day on 2 different floors. So as a basketball fan, if you're there just watching basketball and you're not tied to one team, and also one game's not going well, boom, you jump over to the other one. And I'll tell you, in the Tacoma Dome this year, what happened was they bought the 2 scoreboards, put them up on the curtain. So we brought some other ones, supplemental ones, and put them on the end. And we only have 2 extra scoreboards. So we had them down there, and those veterans who sit in the middle on the curtain so they can see both floors, depending on what side they're on, they couldn't see a clock score. And so Andy and Team Barnes, they did a little adjusting to try to make that visible everywhere. So we have a little bit of tweaking as we go through, but man, what a great problem, because I'll tell you, the scoreboards that we were using, those big ones up on the wall that had been there since day one, their consoles were truly, this is no exaggeration, held together with duct tape. And there wasn't a spare one sitting there. If those babies went down, we were using flip charts at the state tournament. So again, we really appreciate the Tacoma Dome investing some. The new lighting they have in there is spectacular. If you saw the introductions, we had to do some kind of cool stuff for kids with that. But yeah, it's Oregon. I had one of the writers down in Southwest Washington shoot me one, goes, man, I wish we could do this in college venues. And they had the Child Center sold out for one of their games. Well, it's one game at one time. They have one classification there. I don't think our fans, for a $15 ticket with the fees or whatever, getting 16 games in a day. Tough ticket to beat. So, we really appreciate and like that. And hopefully our fans understand, like you, that it doesn't happen everywhere.
So funny you mentioned that. I went down there one year and brought a friend of mine who I hosted a radio show with, Will Sanchez, who's from New York. And he loved it. And being a veteran, sitting in those areas where you can watch both games is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just a unique experience as a basketball junkie. How can you not love that?
Mick, this is Mick Hoffman. He is the executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association, and this is your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio .world, and we are moving into the spring sports, baseball. I hear baseball bats. I hear track runners. I hear tennis balls being hit. We love spring. We have a variety of different sports that the high school kids are going to be doing, and we need coaches, Mick. Mick, we need coaches, and I would just this show is going to be dedicated in regards to some conversations about coaching in the state of Washington and the state of coaching in the state of Washington, not the state of Washington, but the state of what coaches are going through and the experience and what district athletic directors throughout the state are doing to make sure that their coaches are supportive in a positive environment to work with our kids. So the first thing I'll ask you is, let's just discuss the very basics of it in terms of the opportunities for coaches in Washington State and giving them a chance to work with our kids. Tell us about the process and how one goes about becoming a high school coach.
Yeah, I mean, I think really you got to find out where you want to work. Go and talk to those schools. It's a lot of times we'll get the complaints. People want us to fire coaches, do that, but it's an employer-employee relationship with the school. So I think if somebody has passion for a sport, likes to work with kids, is good around kids, they need to reach out to a school. You know, if you're just new to the area, it'd probably be best to start with the actual coaches in the program, especially if you're looking to be an assistant or volunteer some time. Go make sure that's somebody you want to coach with, that he or she aligns philosophy, and then figure out what you got to do with the school district to get processed to be able to get out there. The ADs are really good about getting people through the system once they find people that are worth investing in.
It's really interesting because in some circumstances and some places and in some schools, you know, we talk about the public-private situation, but also in some of the even suburban and rural schools, you've had coaches that have been there for a long time, Mick. Then in other areas, I think about some of the schools here in Seattle, the coaches rotate out, and occasionally you'll get a very, very, very young coach. A young man coaching football at the age of 25, 26, and I'm sitting there scratching my head because I was 41 when I got my first head coaching job, and I couldn't have imagined doing that when I was 25. But developing the skills, what are the ways that coaches and some of the more senior coaches like ourselves at one point, what do we do to break down the profession for the younger people who are hungry about working with kids and coaching sports?
Yeah, I think the first thing we have to do is work with coaches to find out, people interested, like, why do they want to coach? And, I'm a big Joe Ehrman, Jody Redmond, Inside Out coaching fan, Bruce Brown, Rob Miller, Proactive Coaching. And you talk with them, and X's and O's are the easy part, right? We can all learn X's and O's. There's a million videos. There's a million books. I mean, you get online and find a situational play, X and O for anything. But how you deliver, it's like a good classroom teacher. And so, I think the first thing a person has to decide is, why do I want to coach? What is it about? Is it about, this glory? You think you see yourself at the Dome, jumping the gate, going to hug your wife because you just won a state championship? If that's why you're doing it, I mean, that's great to have those goals. But the chance of doing that, I mean, we crown 6 of them a year out of 300, 400 teams. If you really want to talk about that, I think that's the first thing. Go talk to a veteran, find out what it's really like, and then see what it's really like aligns with what you want out of it. Because otherwise you're going to be miserable, which means you're going to make kids miserable.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that from the positive experience. It's so funny. You reeled off a list of names, including one of my favorite people of all time, Bruce Brown, and the things that he's done with proactive coaching and making sure that we are conducting ourselves as adults and as people who are working with these kids to make sure they get not only a competitive experience, but the experience that really that they can take with them and forge components for the rest of our lives. And I love some of the things that you mentioned. And if you will, kind of share with the audience just some of the components that Bruce Brown would talk about, or a Mick Hoffman or a Juan Cotto would talk about in terms of what are we looking to as a coach to build into these kids beyond the X's and O's that they can take with them as they go serve their communities when they're done playing sports.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the critical piece of what a really good coach does. You're going to have talent that's going to align with your coaching skills that are going to get you wins. That's a byproduct of the other things. So I think the first thing is what do you want your kids to get out of their experience with you? That's the first thing. And for those that I was lucky early in my career to get to hear Bruce Brown and get connected with him, and then Joe Ehrman. And one of the things is reflecting on why do you coach the way you do? And most of us, when we started off coaching, I was 20 years old when I quit playing in high school and started coaching in high school as a freshman coach. And I coached the way I was coached to start. And by the time I finished, my style was very different than how I was coached. Because you got to figure out the other piece is you got to figure out what's your style. Who and what are you about? Why do I coach like that? And what do I want them to do? And then what are the transferable skills, right? So if you're going to be the term transformational coach, you probably heard Bruce use that term a gazillion times as well. Like that's where we're really impacting people. And I'm telling you, we just talked about winter events. So when I was in Spokane, I called a former player of mine over there, Ryan. This guy's 41 years old. He's got 2 kids in college. One's an athlete. She's a Division I volleyball player. He's got a freshman in high school. And he was so excited to get together and have dinner. He came down, watched a couple games with me. And we just talked about life in general and parenting our kids. And, when you're older, you have the opportunity to be a mentor if you do it. And it's not like I've done everything right, but I've just, you can learn from doing things wrong. And it's funny to listen to him because he played for me as a freshman and then he played for me on the JV as a junior. And to hear his, what his experience was like compared to my experience on the same team. And then how those things, the lessons he learned from that, his wife was a Division I player and how her experience as a Division I athlete carries over into how they parent and what they expect out of their own kids. And I think that's probably, if we can get that ingrained in our coaches early in their career, that the things you say, and he remembers things I said to him as a 15-year-old kid that impacted him. I don't even remember the conversation. I don't remember the situation in practice. 26 years later, he's 15 years old again, recalling it, good and bad. The impact that a coach has is absolutely incredible. And I had no idea when I was first starting out, but now I do. And I think that's, as an older coach, that's something we can impart on our younger coaches, that their words matter and their words are incredibly powerful.
It is absolutely amazing how much the kids want to please you as a coach. If you tell them, you have the ability to get a 2.75 GPA, and he's been below 2 his whole academic career, it's amazing how hard they will try to get their grades over 2.75. It's such a powerful role to have because the students really do respect the time and the relationship, and they really want to do well for their coaches.
Yeah, 100%. And the other thing is you can impart a belief in them that they don't even have in themselves. I had a young man when I was a varsity coach my first year, and tough family, good people, tough family. Mom had experienced some homelessness, so they would be considered McKinney-Vento now, living with friends, family. Dad was not really real involved in the family. was around occasionally. And so the kid was always hustling. He's a worker, so he did a ton of work for me. So he was always in debt to me and always working off at the house. And we were sitting there one time waiting for the cement truck, and he's sitting there yakking with me and my buddy, who was actually the guy, the mason, who knew how to do the work. I was the grunt. And I looked at him, and it's like 5:30 in the morning on a Saturday, and I'm like, "Hey, are you on the clock right now?" "Yeah." "Oh." So I went and got him a bag and a shovel, and I said, "Hey, go in the backyard, pick up dog poop." Gave him a flashlight. He's like, "Are you serious, coach?" And I'm like, "Hey, first of all, yeah, you're on the clock, so I need you to do some work if you're going to get paid. So one, I'm going to teach you you're going to work for what you get." And I said to him off the cuff, like, "And besides that, if you don't finish school, you don't go get a degree or some type of training, you're going to be picking up somebody else's dog poop your whole life." That kid, when he was a senior in college, he went off and played some community college basketball. Then he went to a big 4-year school. He wasn't good enough to play there, so he did intramurals. But he called me his senior year, and he's like, "Coach, I want you to know I'm getting a double major. And I've committed myself that I was never going to be the guy picking up somebody else's dog poop." And so again, here's an off the cuff. I'm being a smart aleck with my buddy and this kid at 5:30 in the morning on a Saturday. 6 years later, he's calling to tell me that he gutted this thing out and he's getting this double degree. Now I follow him on social media. That dang kid, he's got a family. His mom went back, got her degree. She's doing well. His brother's got a full-time job with the railroad. And he's a financial investor planner, certified financial planner, giving his kids experiences that his mom and dad wanted to. They just weren't able to, and so again, my part being a smart aleck and challenging him essentially. His job doing it, and his parents, were there to love him along the way and help him get there. And so, those are things that I think coaches need to understand, because I can remember some wins, I can remember some losses, but that kid, he's never going to forget us working together. And so I think it's really, really important that coaches go into the profession understanding the impact they can have. And I could have been a devastating impact, and I probably was on a few kids I've never heard from, right? Those are the ones that keep you up at night, that you just don't know, because all of a sudden they were gone. And so it's quite an honor to be called coach. Also comes with a huge responsibility.
That is wise words from Mick Hoffman, the executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. Spent many years as a basketball coach down in Southwest Washington, and has influenced so many kids, and those stories are so powerful. Telling the stories of our kids on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Mick, I had to work with, and I had the opportunity to work with 4 wonderful people. I'm sure you will remember some of these names: Darby Haskins, Tara McAvoy, a man by the name of Jerry Bamberg, and Mary Sagal, my athletic directors. And they made it really, really clear for me, with all of the things that I was responsible for as a football coach, that they were there to work for me. And the athletic director plays such a powerful role on so many different levels, to make sure that the buses are on time, to make sure that the fields are reserved, to make sure that the schedule is reserved, to make sure that the kids' paperwork is turned in. Tell us about the role of the athletic director at the individual schools, and tell us how that works, and tell us how they work to make sure that the coaches are put in their best possible position to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, an athletic director definitely has the opportunity to be a servant leader. When you talk about, Tony Dungy's work on service leadership, yeah, I mean, a lot of people see the AD at a contest leaning against the wall watching the game thinking, oh, that'd be the greatest job in the world. Heck, all they're waiting is for something to go wrong during the game or in the stands. They have to go deal. That's all their work's been done well before that game started. And yeah, I think setting that clear expectation of what you want from your coaches, and then being the giver, right? I mean, you have to be the giver of time. You have to be the giver of opportunity of wisdom. You're the liaison a lot of times between the coach and the family. I mean, coaches decide playing time, they coach people on the team. And in today's world, with the demands and expectations of parents, the role of the AD is even more critical than ever if you want to hang on to your good coaches that have to make those tough decisions. And so, but the amount of work, the amount of liability around sports, I mean, that's something we are always challenged with, is not scaring the bejesus out of our schools with potential liability issues because everything's become so litigious. So trying to create systems for your coaches so it's easy for them to go and do what they love, and that's work with kids. And so when you become the AD, you lose that direct connect with kids, but you have the chance to impact even more kids through your coaches. So yeah, it's the budget cuts that we're seeing, the other duties being assigned ADs, their time, they're getting pulled in so many directions. We're losing a lot of good ADs. We're going to lose them to burnout for those that stay in, and their attention's divided. So those are people that need a hug, not a nasty gram email. So.
And share with just a little bit, and we have about a minute before break, but I want you to touch on this just a little bit. And it just seems like, my last time up at Nathan Hale was 2017, and I was at Highline for 5 years, at Franklin for a year. Tell us about what you described, and it seems like it's just more and more the pressure that's been put on coaches and athletic directors within, and what do you think is driving some of that pressure?
Well, I mean, one, our communities love sports, right? So there's huge passion for it. So we got passion, you got emotion. The other piece is there's this whole, the whole industry. We've talked about that a lot. Largest unregulated business in the country is youth sports, club sports. And so you have people out there, some of them doing great work with no different than school coaches and school ADs doing that. And you got other people preying on people and, filling them with this concept that their kid's the greatest ever, because the more the parent believes, the more the parent's going to pay. And people are making a living. I make a living off of youth sports, so I'm not saying that people don't have a right to make the living, but we also have to be realistic and fair with people. And so when parents have spent all their disposable income on their kids from the age of 4 up to 14, and then turn them over to the high school coach, and all of a sudden they're second string, or not scoring 20 points a game, they're going to blame somebody, because they're not going to blame their kid. They're not going to blame the people that have fed them the story. And so next up is that high school coach, and I think that's where we're seeing a lot of the conflict.
Well, that's very reminiscent of the fact that people in the community love Rainier Avenue Radio, Mick, and they love WIAA Primetime, and we put pressure on ourselves to give them great information Tuesdays at 3 o'clock. So we're going to take a little bit of a break here, and that now the pressure's on Daniel Bellis to get us in and out of that break on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Rainier Avenue Radio. Rainier Avenue Radio.
This is a Rainier Avenue Radio message on fentanyl awareness in our communities.
We need to be a community in order to solve this problem. When I hear fentanyl, like you said, Tony, there's a lot of people who don't want to talk about it. And there is so much negative stigma that is attached to fentanyl, and it's this othering of the community, right up until it is their family member, which is increasingly happening. And I hate that a lot of people just refuse to engage in these conversations until it's too late for their family member. A secondary trauma is something that we also hold space for and have to live with as well. This community has, I think, experienced a disproportionate amount of impact from just drug use in general.
This has been a Rainier Avenue Radio message on fentanyl.
Hey, community, listen to New Hope Missionary Baptist Church every Sunday, 10:45 a.m.
We invite you to get up and call a friend and tell them that New Hope is on live. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And now, Our pastor, the Reverend Dr. Robert L. Jeffrey Sr. Everybody clap your hand, come on.
Listen to New Hope Missionary Baptist Church every Sunday, 10:45 a.m.
We must all remain committed to slow the spread of coronavirus, taking care of ourselves and not putting others in harm's way, especially those already at high risk of getting seriously ill, including people over 65 or those with underlying medical conditions. If you must be out, avoid crowded areas, stay 6 feet or 2 arm lengths away from others, and wear a face covering. Wash hands frequently with soap and water for 20 seconds, especially after being in public spaces. Avoid touching your face, cough or sneeze in a tissue, then throw it away. Disinfect frequently touched objects. And if you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. Slowing coronavirus means taking care of ourselves while also protecting others. Even if you're not at high risk, these steps should be taken to help slow the spread of coronavirus. We are all in this together.
Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for this?
This is Rainier Avenue Radio .world, the station that cares about our community.
Welcome back to the second half of WIAA Primetime. It is Tuesday. It is 3:30, and you have Juan Cotto, the host of Rainier Avenue Radio WIAA Primetime, with the executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. Mick Hoffman sits in with us and really discusses a variety of different issues, and certainly we talked about the state tournaments. Mick, tell me about the bowling tournament. I've always loved bowling, going back to watching Mark Roth and Earl Anthony, and you say more kids are starting to pick up that ball and drill the 3 holes in it and roll it down the lane.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising because we've lost so many bowling houses around the state where they've kind of bulldozed them. Vancouver lost a huge one, Crosley Bowl, 60-some lanes, but more and more schools are finding, they're trying to support their women athletes, and they're offering it up, and so we're getting more teams competing, which expands our tournaments. Our tournaments all proportional, so we've had some combined tournaments classifications, and now we're going to be able to break them apart and give them their own tournament. So it's great for us. High school bowling's fun. They got some of the best songs. There's traditions there where they get out and they do a dance together, the Macarena. It's just become tradition at these events where a lot of them, that's the only sport or activity they compete in. And so they have a really good time. Parents are into it. The parents know the cheers. You see them dressed up. You got parents with all geared up to support their daughters. So it's actually a really fun event to attend and to watch.
It's some people are just blessed with too many talents, and he's really starting to become, in a couple of years, he's really gonna be one of the legendary players in baseball history. A guy by the name of Mookie Betts. And I'm scrolling, and I've been trying to stop scrolling, but I see this thing where Mookie Betts has a 281 bowling average, and as soon as the Dodgers season's over, he shakes himself off a little bit and he goes walking into bowling lanes and competes with the PGA Tour guys. Or the PBA Tour guys. It's just incredible how, and I think that's another reason kids see these an athlete like that who. And by the way, I was an avid bowler. That ball goes wherever it wants to, Mick. I can't control it. And see Mookie Betts hit the pocket every time is crazy.
Yeah, I think Chris Paul's a big bowler too, the NBA hooper. So. It's and this year Bolero in Tukwila, they've been our host site. And Paul Beatty with Eli Sports, ESN Sports Network, he does a lot of the streaming for us. So we're able to stream almost all the lanes. And Bolero opened up the whole place. So the bar, instead of selling beer, was a lounge essentially for people to just go sit in, extra space because you couldn't walk through the place. It was packed. So we're able to stream on their TVs where people, tonight will be in there having an adult beverage and watching some basketball games. For ours, they have bowling up on all the screens, and people are in there eating their lunches with their kids, and little kids running around. And so it's a great family community event. And that's really what's cool about bowling is a lot of these young ladies, they started bowling because their parents bowled, right? And grandma and grandpa bowled, and they go bowling leagues with each other. And they can do youth tournaments together. And so it's a unique sport in that families can actually compete actively together and not be supporting one or the other. So
that is, I mean, it just sounds so, it sounds so different. But then again, I mean, we have esports tournaments now, and, you know, and obviously we have a variety of different things, but the bowling tournament. And what were some of the other winter sports that may not have gotten the publicity of basketball?
Gymnastics is another big one for us. And so Sammamish High School is a phenomenal setting, and the fans get to be right on top of it. And again, some outstanding performances. And what's really cool about high school gymnastics is, you know, you have those real elite. George Childs, you know, she was an Olympic gymnast and out of Prairie High School, actually in Vancouver, but she didn't compete in our stuff because she's, you know, traveling the world. They're on a special schedule at school. So ours is a chance for, you know, not the ones who we're going to see in the Olympics, but kids who want to compete, that typical high school athlete, that 99%. A lot of them will go to college and compete. But again, that 99% of the students we serve, that their senior years, their last year of you know, competition. So gymnastics is a great event there. And then we had swimming. So King County Aquatic Center for the men. Again, if you haven't been there, they're hosting the NCAA tournaments there. They host. It was built for the Goodwill games. It is a really, really cool. I mean, again, you talk about our kids being able to play in the Tacoma Dome, some of those things. I mean, it doesn't matter where we go. They're getting to play in some really cool venues, and that's about as good as it gets.
That's a world-class facility, and certainly the excitement of competing at the Aquatic Center. And I was here during the Goodwill games, and I remember how big that activity actually was, and looking back on it, the importance of what Ted Turner had in mind. But to be able to have a building that has served King County so well, and it's still exciting for the swimming athletes, that's got to be really cool.
Yeah, and they're pumping. They're maintaining it. They've upgraded the lighting, the HVAC, so it's really comfortable in there for a large swim facility. The another one that, you know, it's not sanctioned. We're hoping after we get done with our amendments here, girls flag football, they had their West Side championships, and James Neal and team. You know, again, I'm trying to remember who won it, but it was a first-year school competing in it. So again, it's one of those sports that it doesn't take years and years and years to develop that. You get some coaches who know football, you get some athletes and some girls with some skills, and you go out and compete. So, you know, we had over 90 schools competing this year in girls flag. And so it's definitely of interest to people. So hopefully we'll be able to run some state championships for that in the near future.
Some of these older guys are starting to retire a little bit. I can see Charlie Canoon and Monty Kohler lining up a couple of different teams, one from Mount Si and one from Holy Names, and getting after it one of these days. That would be something to see, and I'm sure they would have all the coverages in place, and be a very, very interesting game of 7-on-7 in the flag football for girls. That would be fun to watch. And hey, Mick, please let's do this next year. Remind me about that bowling tournament. I'm gonna go check that out next year. I will definitely be there with you on that.
Okay, for sure.
Let's go back to coaching. So, and obviously we were having conversations about the athletic directors and the role they play, and then let's touch on this a little bit. I had some good friends. I'm extremely good friends with a baseball coach in the area, and a gentleman who I have a lot of respect for, a gentleman who's worked with us here on Rainier Avenue Radio, and I promise not to mention names. Real sharp guy, and put together a heck of a program at a school here in Seattle. But the parents got together and disappointed that he, quote unquote, doesn't have a baseball IQ, whatever that means. And they decided to go in a different direction. And all of the work that this gentleman does, and we've seen it, Mick, so many times, parents will sit down, and there'll be some people who may not be real happy with the fact that their child didn't get the playing time they deserve, and you reference that in regards to the fact that with select teams and all these other things, they've put in a tremendous investment, and they like to see a return on that investment at times, and those are things that put pressure on the coaches. But walk us through this. How can we make sure that our coaches are getting support in these types of situations, and how does that work in regards to looking at different ways that we can not only support coaches but make sure that they're thriving at the schools that they're at.
Yeah, that's really where the concern, my greatest concern with this rotation in athletic directors, because without strong leadership, right, in a culture within a school of what the purpose of athletics are, then you're going to have these groups be able to come in and attack, and you don't have a fortified base to work from. But I'll tell you what, when I was an AD and somebody would come in after one of our coaches, my question always was, do you think that coach wants to win? Or do they just out there, playing for fun? Well, no, absolutely they want to win. They're really competitive. Then if they really want to win, why wouldn't they be playing the most talented kids? Right? So either your kid's not one of the most talented kids, and that's why they're not on the team, or your coach has a purpose greater than winning. There's something else going on with your child and how they're going about their work or what they've done with how they're interacting with others. Have you gone in and had that conversation with the coach yet? Right? To find out why, because you're assuming it's your coach doesn't know what they're doing or they're playing favorites, but you're telling me they want to win. So you need to go find out what's going on with the coach. And I think you got to have parents be held accountable. I mean, we see it all the time. You're driving up the road today. If you see a cop, you're probably going to automatically look at your speedometer or slow down, even if you're just at the speed limit, right? Because there's a level of accountability coming. And if students are being held accountable, parents being held accountable, coaches being held accountable, ADs, we can get through some of this other stuff. But when that gets out of balance and all the power is given to somebody because they're worried about mad parents and bad press and not passing levies, we're in trouble. And so we all love our kids, but that's not always the most fair lens to judge a coach's ability by. And you know what? Sometimes we make some bad hires on coaches and people are slow to make a change, and there needs to be a push for that. But most of the time, right, we know right from wrong, and we got to stand up for what's right. And we have to be willing to stand in a fire and take those shots if it's right, because otherwise we got to get out of leadership.
Mick, I remember football season, and it seems like all the other sports as well. You should be basketball. I used to joke with Darby Haskins that basketball was 13 months out of the year, but it seems like football is now 13 and a half months out of the year. As a parent of a football player, it seems like it's closing in on 14 months out of the year. I know basketball is now 14 to 15 months out of a 12-month year, and now some of the other sports they're getting more attention, and then there's more opportunities, and as this NIL kind of seeps its way through cross country and track and field, and allowing athletes to get opportunities, it seems like those sports are taking on more and more months in a 12-month year, and what that tends to lead to for the coaches is burnout. I remember being one year, my fourth or fifth year, I think it was my fourth year at Highline High School. We got to October, and I just remember waking up one morning and thinking to myself, by golly, I am exhausted. Yeah. And I know that I have spoken to other coaches, and the calendar in those months, it goes so fast and slow at the same time, and you wake up on multiple days not knowing what day it is. You have classes to teach, or if you're outside the building as I was, you're also trying to manage a full-time job. What can we do to balance off the work of coaches, as it seems like more and more is being piled up on that expectation sheet?
Yeah, I know it's a huge concern. I'll give you an example. My first year, so 6 years ago, we put up an amendment to make 7-on-7 football a distinct sport in the spring. And the football coaches, right, said, look, we already coach too much, right? By the time we go through our season, then we do our spring ball, we got the weight room open all summer, we're going to camp. We don't need another season. And my counter to them was, okay, but kids are going to want to play this stuff, right? And so we ended up not being able to pass that amendment. A year later, I'm getting an email from some of those very coaches that were worried about that, and they're like, hey, how do we get control of this 7-on-7? Our kids are out playing for people we don't want them playing for. So, it's the yin-yang effect of this thing. And because of that experience going through that with the coaches, it really hit me. It should have been obvious. I guess I'm slow, but that's where we have to utilize. We can't just have it be on the head coach. That's where coaches, need to use other people. And we're starting to see this. Club volleyball is pretty good at it, that they'll kind of get their kids sheltered or directed to certain clubs where they trust those coaches, where the people aren't running those clubs and then trying to get kids to move around to other schools and do all that. They're really just coaching kids in club and doing their thing. We're starting to see it in basketball, right? Where by the end of June now, school basketball is over and they're all sold off with their AAU coaches, right? Good, bad, or indifferent, depending on who they go play for. So I think what we need to do is we got to change the mentality that the head coach or the coaching school staff has to be the one coaching the baseball in the summer. Like, can you partner with somebody that within the rules, right? But on a season, you got more flexibility that you can send them to coaches that you trust working with your kids, that philosophically, going back to those inside out coaches, why do I coach? Why do I coach the way I do? How do I define success? That align with you philosophically, that you can send your kids to. They're hearing the same thing in a different way, in a different voice, which reinforces what you're trying to do during the season. And they're with somebody who's going to take care of them. And so I think that is the only way we combat this year-round burnout, because at that point, coaches then will also understand it's good for kids to play multi-sports, right? And the unicorns that are pro athletes, they're unicorns. They've got special gifts. But they also, if you look at them, almost all of them play two sports. Going up through high school, and some even in college.
Going back to the unicorns, and on the male and female side of things, here in Washington State recently, we've had some amazing athletes, Mick Hoffman. We've had some young people drafted into the National Basketball Association. We have a guy by the name of Corbin Carroll, who was starting in left field for the National League All-Stars at the All-Star game in Seattle, and he played at Lakeside High School. And I think about young Haley Van Lith, who's been a star basketball player who played up in the northern part of the state. And I know she just transferred school. She was at LSU last year and is now playing for another school. And she's always seems to be in the mix of the NCAA tournament conversation. We've had some tremendous athletes run through here. However, most of the athletes that are playing sports are like you and me. They go out there, you put them out there, they give you 24, 25 good solid minutes a night. They get the ball to those people. They get the ball to Paulo Banchero and the Haley Lifts, and they get their rebounds, and they're good supporting cast. And how do we as coaches balance the expectation of the young athletes who believe that they are going to play in the professional ranks or even the Division I college ranks, and get them to understand that, hey, you know something? Playing high school sports may be as far as you go, and you playing high school sports has been a tremendous activity for you.
Yeah, no, it's tough for coaches, right? Because you don't want to crush kids' dreams. You want them to dream big. But at the same time, you got to give them the realistic output. I think one of it is if you can get them the opportunity to go compete against the really good talent. I'll tell you, I had a really good group of freshmen come in when I was at Fort Vancouver High School, and most of them were going to be 5'11" to 6'1". They thought they're all Division I college basketball players. So we put together a little AAU team that summer. We went down and played in the Adidas Big Time tournament in Vegas. And we had 8th graders dunking and warm-ups against us. And when we got done, okay, what'd you learn down here? What'd you think? I'm just going to be happy to be a good high school basketball player. Like, their whole perspective changed because they just went out and lived it. I mean, they competed, but we got thumped a couple times by some of these teams. Because I asked them before we went down, hey, what level do you think we should play at? Hey, we're going to do this is your experience. They thought they were really good, and we learned very quickly that all those Division I coaches walking in the gym, they weren't coming to our floor to watch us. And so I think you just have to educate the kids in a way that doesn't crush their dreams, because I do believe with some of these new rules, there's going to be a lot more opportunity to play post high school. We know they're recruiting freshmen less because of the NIL and the transfer portal. And now that community college doesn't count against your 4 years of eligibility, it's very likely that more schools are going to open up more programs because kids will be willing to pay tuition to go play at the collegiate level, especially at that level. So we might see track teams fill up. We might see some of these other sports that sometimes they have a hard time filling because they don't have to give kids money. They're paying to go to school anyway. Now they might have a chance to play. So, they get out and play in that, and they play against a little deeper pool of talent, and reality sets in pretty fast. So, we know it because we've lived it, but how do you get kids to do that? Give them the opportunity, bring in other athletes with technology. We're running a show today from Olympia, Battleground, Washington, and Daniel's sitting in South Seattle. We can connect kids with that kind of information pretty easy from people that they'll respect and listen to.
Mick, you're so right. I'll never forget, when I was in Western Oregon on a Saturday morning, we faced a guy by the name of Anthony Telford, who was at San Jose State University. And Telford would end up being drafted by the Montreal Expos and had a very, very nice career in Major League Baseball. And I will never forget the first pitch. Coach Caligiuri told me to run in there and hit. I went and grabbed my helmet because he had struck out at that point like 11 of us, and it was like in 4 innings. So I grabbed my bat, and I was like, why can't we hit this guy? And Telford's first pitch, I didn't see it, and the umpire said it was a strike. And I called time out, and I said, hey, man, can you help me for a second? He goes, no, it was right down the middle. I said, no, I couldn't see it. And so Coach thought, at the end of the game, Coach asked me what I thought, and I said, you know something? I'm going to make sure I graduate with a degree. Because these guys, some of these guys are just, they are at another level. And you want to work to get to that level, and then trust me, I did. But some of these guys have some gifts that are unexplainable. So that's always a challenge. And I'm sure you probably came against guys like that when you were playing and coaching as well.
Yeah, there's a guy who played at the University of Houston, and we were playing in a pro-am. I remember him jumping by me over my shoulder and dunking on me. I was just coming out of high school, and I thought, what am I doing? So, it can be very humbling. A kid named Duke Wellenborn, he was at Wazoo, ended up at Western, and he passed while he was up there from a heart issue. He's Gatorade Player of the Year in Washington, 6'7", just silky smooth, nice guy. And you play against those guys, and it's just a totally different level. And so how do we let students know that, but at the same time know what is possible for them? And like I said, I think there's going to be some opportunities opened up with some of these new eligibility rules at the community college level. So I think it's really important that we keep that in mind and keep kids motivated but realistic.
Mick, when I was at Highline High School, we would go and play Kennedy every year, the annual Battle of Burien, and at that time, and pretty much most of the time, Kennedy had some pretty exceptional athletes, and we'd come into halftime, considerably down in the game. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective, coaches, that's a magical time for coaches, because what I learned is, and I'm sure you can kind of expound on this, you define what the wins and losses are. Yeah. And you may look at the scoreboard at halftime, you get your team in there, and they have their heads down a little bit, and the score is a lot for them and little for you. But you have to go out and play the second half, and you want to make it competitive, and you want them to feel good about their effort. And we would always come up with some different ways. If we get 4 first downs, we're all going out for pizza tonight. If we get a first down sometimes, in the third quarter, we're going to celebrate by doing something. And I was wondering, what are the things that coaches can do to build confidence in young people, and sometimes when they feel that the scoreboard may be tilted against them?
Well, I think you just gave great examples. I mean, again, part of that inside-out coaching is how do you define success? And success over the course of the season is different than over the course of the month and over the course of a kid's career. So you give some goals, some of which are reachable, not totally teed up, and then you start working on the stretch, right? And that's what motivates kids to work harder and to get there. So if you're going out for pizza for 4 first downs, then the next game, depending on who you're playing, it might be 5 or 6. And now all of a sudden you start paying attention to what, how do we get that 5th or 6th first down? What's it take rather than just hoping it happens? We see that too often where people want to make everybody happy because they're afraid of parents coming after them, kids quitting, and they don't do that grinded out work. So, yeah, I think setting multiple goals that, get to the ultimate goal of whatever that is, with the understanding that you may not be able to reach that ultimate goal, but if it's potential, put it on the page and then have some steps. And what we don't do a very good job, even in our work life and personal life, is celebrate along the way. We had a staff meeting today, a board meeting, planning. We have our board meeting Sunday, and so I had our executives on a call. And at the end of it, I said, okay, we're dealing with some of the ugly stuff, some of the governance type things, the bureaucratic stuff, the penalties. And I said, hey, here's the one thing in this meeting, like this needs to be a real celebration. We've absolutely hit it out of the park this year with our events and what we've provided for kids, like with everything else, all the pressure on us with some of these controversial amendments and just all the things going on in high schools and high school sports with finances. Like we can't forget to celebrate, whether it's having pizza for 4 first downs or if it's, a personal event in somebody's life. Like we have to take time to celebrate because that's what makes it fun. And we just keep on grinding, and it makes the grind a lot more bearable when we can recognize success along the way. I got an athlete, though, for you, Juan, before we lose out here. I had to look up, make sure I had it. It wasn't Amanda Mall, right? So the twin sisters we had down at Capitol a couple of years ago, pole vaulters. So I saw she just set the NCAA record for pole vault. She went over 16 feet. So, you talk about that's world class. Those are kids we're going to see in the Olympics competing and earning medals that we had, at Mount Tahoma High School on a weekend in May competing in the WIAA state tournament. So we have some of those unicorns for us. She's at University of Washington for people who still want to go watch her in person, pole vaulting. But, how extraordinary. Those are some of the athletes that are truly world class and maybe don't get the recognition of some of our other sports. But we have them. And again, those are the things we have to celebrate. So,
Mick, I love that story that you just shared with us in regards to celebrating, and it really speaks to the development of culture. And as we close down, I had a meeting with our president, Kurt Bailey at Bloodworks Northwest, and we were talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. But it all boils down to what type of culture you establish. And if you establish a culture, and that's something that we learn as coaches, that if you establish a culture that makes people feel a part of it, make them feel that they're achieving their full potential, they in that culture will develop and they'll give you everything. And I think that is the role that coaches most importantly need to have. And like you said, defining what success is, and those are the skills that I think that you can transfer to your student athletes that they can take and serve the community.
Yeah, totally agree. And it has to be genuine. People know kids can tell a fraud, right? And a lot of our kids have had so many people come in and out of their life and be a fraud that all the things you said, it has to be genuine. And those are the people. That's why we're looking for what kind of person. We teach a person to coach, right? It's tough to teach a person how to work with a young person.
Well, there you had it. Words of wisdom, words of love and coaching from Mick Hoffman, the executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. On WIAA Primetime, we are signing off, and we will see you very, very soon on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Mick, always great to see you. Daniel, thank you.
Juan, the seatbelt is a really nice touch, by the way. I love it. You see, you get your kick back in the back.
Next time.